Thanks. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Rupert Brown, and I'm one of the co-founders of T-. And I'm very pleased to welcome our very special guest for tonight's T- webinar. From the Isle of Wight, we have Susan Poole. Susan is an audiologist with a very special interest in tinnitus. Susan has also been helping and supporting us from the very beginning and has kindly agreed to give us her time once again this evening. Thanks so much for joining us, Susan. Could you please tell the attendees specifically what it is that you do, please?
Well, hi, Rupert. Lovely to see you again, and hi, community. I may well know some of you or not. As Rupert says, I'm an audiologist. I've been working as an audiologist for nearly 25 years now on the island, but in the last 10 years or so, I guess it must be now, had a real special interest in tinnitus and really enjoying working with people. I work from home 1 or 2 days a week making telephone consultations, which has worked incredibly well through the pandemic, and I see patients face to face as well. So that might be for counselling, but mainly for perhaps adjustments to hearing aids, because counselling now, patients really do prefer not to be coming into the hospital environment, and find it far more relaxing often to be talking on the phone, as long as their hearing is good enough for that. So yeah, on a daily basis, I might be dealing with a child or an elderly person, depending. And that's the great thing about audiology. And often, of course, I'll get thrown into, can you help with a hearing aid repair or whatever? So background in audiology, but sort of moved on to enjoying helping and supporting people manage their tinnitus, basically.
That's fantastic, Susan. I've got loads of questions. I've tried to keep them really different, and I hope that I've never asked you them before, but if I do, there is a deliberate reason for it, because I want to see how things may have changed, because the climate has changed. So it might. So the first one is really simple. Please, can you tell me about hearing loss and how it may bring on the condition of tinnitus?
Wow, good question. About hearing loss. Well, of course, it's different for absolutely everybody. It's acquired differently by everybody. So it's a really difficult question to ask, and there are different types of hearing loss. So, you know, you could have a normal wear and tear loss that we call presbycusis, which is just high frequencies that deteriorate through wear and tear. And that's because the high frequency hair cells are the first in line in the shape of the cochlea to take any brunt force of physical force, if you like. So that's why those high frequency hair cells are more likely to deteriorate first. So the most common form of hearing loss would be a high frequency sensory neural hearing loss, which means a problem with the nerve rather than anything else. So wear and tear of those hair cells or the pathway or something else. But it's what we call nerve deafness, or people think of it as nerve deafness, but it's actually those hair cells that in the cochlea that are damaged through wear and tear. Some people acquire hearing loss through infection, and often, you know, there can be, again, two types of loss with that. You may get a conductive hearing loss, so your ear's blocked with glue ear, for example, and it's something children suffer with a lot. And it's really important when children have glue ear that we're very aware that everybody around them knows, because crossing the road when you've only got one hearing ear is an incredibly dangerous thing to do, because you don't know where the sound is coming from.
Yeah.
So those would be conductive problems, and it might be that the ear becomes damaged. And again, that conductive element, that middle ear part, not the inner ear, but the middle ear, has those little bones that conduct the sound. So if that's damaged in any way, we would call that a conductive hearing loss. And there are different ways of managing that, actually. It could be surgical, and it could even be an implantable type of aid. And then, of course, you've got your hearing losses perhaps that you inherited, or are linked to a certain genetic condition, and again, that could be conductive, or more likely we often see a lot of sensory neural problems like that, where the hearing loss would be perhaps the reverse of your normal wear and tear. So instead of a high frequency loss, you might have a low frequency one, or what we call cookie bite, which is your mid frequencies are gone. So it's difficult to show you without a chart, to be fair. But yes, so many different types of hearing loss. And then why does that link in with tinnitus? Well, you can have perfectly normal hearing and have tinnitus. You can have absolutely no hearing and not have tinnitus. You can have no hearing and have tinnitus. You can have any combination which way. So they don't necessarily go together. But we think, and there are lots of different thought processes about this, but often with damage to our hearing that's acquired, there's inflammation at the same time. And if something along that pathway has become inflamed, more likely to be the nerve endings, to be fair, and at the brain end of things, then of course that can then be misinterpreted as tinnitus, and the brain's then thinking that there's a sound that it's hearing when it actually isn't a sound that's being heard, but that's caused perhaps by some damage there. So something along that pathway there, be it the hair cells that aren't working properly, or something along that pathway, maybe at the brain end, isn't working properly, and that's causing that tinnitus. Infections particularly are, and we're seeing more of that with COVID now, as we were discussing earlier. Inflammatory processes of infections are often a cause of a more transient tinnitus and won't necessarily be with you all the time. It could be something that will settle with given a good period of time, as long as you've learned to manage it and you aren't being anxious about it. So the chances are that will settle. I do meet lots of people who in clinic, I will say, do you have tinnitus? Well, no, I used to, but I don't anymore. Or I used to have a problem with it and I don't have a problem with it anymore. In other words, perhaps they still have it, but it doesn't bother them at all. So, and there perhaps be more the infection related tinnitus sufferers rather than anything else. So it's difficult to know. Sometimes it's a trigger with drugs. So, again, it could be the drugs that you're given to get you better. Or if you're so seriously unwell with something like COVID and you are, your blood pressure drops hideously, those are big risk factors for acquiring tinnitus.
So interesting. Thank you very much, Susan. I've got another question now related to hearing loss, and just as a layman, which I am, from talking to people, I've noticed that with hearing aids, that can sometimes really help with the problems associated with tinnitus.
Yeah.
Just due to the fact that they're getting some of those frequencies back again, so their brain is amplifying it. Would you care to explain that a little bit more, if that's okay? How would a hearing aid help then and alleviate the tinnitus and bring the sound down?
Exactly. People can't believe how well they can work. Now, I'm not saying it works for every single body. There will be that 0.1%, whatever it is, where they don't work. And we don't understand that, but that must be somehow about the acquisition of the tinnitus. But most of the time, people will put the hearing aids in and say it's definitely more in the background. It may not be right in the background, but by constant use of the aid, it becomes less and less in the foreground and more in the background. And a lot of it we think is about auditory load. So, if we're hearing what we should be hearing, our brain is much happier with that. But when it's been straining to hear, because you're really trying hard to listen, and it's quite exhausting to listen when you've got a hearing loss, whether you've got aids in or not, it's very tiring. And when you're straining so much to hear all the time and really having to concentrate on what's being said, then you are more likely to tune your tinnitus in, because you're saying to your brain, tune in, tune in. And then you're also saying to your brain, yeah, but not the tinnitus. Well, that doesn't work. Your brain can't do that. So as soon as we give you the hearing aids and your brain's hearing it wants to hear, of course, it's not interested in the tinnitus. It's the auditory load has reduced and you're not so stressed, or the hearing system isn't so stressed. So of course it's much happier that it can hear what it should be hearing and really doesn't want to listen to the tinnitus. It wants to hear what you want to hear.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much for that answer. That really clears up that a great deal. I've got another question here, which is actually from someone that I asked. So I've had a few questions that have actually come in earlier of this week, which is, there was a real concern, which is, does tinnitus worsen with age? And that, I would say, is probably in the top 3 questions.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I would say not necessarily no. I mean, the odd person might say so, but I've not seen any evidence of that whatsoever, as far as being an actual trend. Because usually, in fact, I often see more the reverse, because usually as people get older, they are less perhaps bothered by it. So we know ourselves, as time goes on, we tend to be less bothered by it. Now, there will be certain times when maybe that's not the case. Perhaps someone has a dementia where they fixate on something.
But that's another one. Okay, yeah, please. I'm really interested.
Well, yes, and so, you know, with dementia, you may find that someone becomes really fixated and then doesn't want to wear their hearing aids. It becomes agitated by sound, yet they're experiencing tinnitus or hallucinations or whatever. But you know, that's incredibly rare. And most people would say, no, it doesn't get worse with age. It doesn't necessarily have to change unless you're having those normal spikes in life that you get with stresses and strains, which is fair enough, or you become unwell maybe. But no, I you know, I wouldn't say that that's a general rule.
That's brilliant. That's really positive, and it's a truthful answer, but it's incredibly positive. That's what I say to people, but I kind of say to people that knowing that I've spoken to you, Susan.
Yeah,
and
you know,
just from my
important.
Yeah, I know that my tinnitus has got a hell of a lot better, actually. And I think it's the management of the anxiety and the fears that are concerned quite a lot of the time. It was in my case, that's for sure. You take the heat out of it and you can do so much with your tinnitus. You can start to play with it a little bit and go to play. Yeah, that's a great answer. Thanks, Susan. I have another question here, which is, why do we get the spikes? Or in a sense, why does tinnitus get louder sometimes?
Well, good question. And if I knew that answer, hey, that would be great. We know certain things are spikes, but the best thing to do if you're not sure of what's causing your spikes is to do yourself a little diary. So make a diary of when you're getting those spikes, and then, you know, look at, it's unlikely to be diet. If I'm honest, I think, you know, there's always in the past been, oh, you mustn't have coffee. And we've had this discussion before. Actually, if you enjoy a cup of coffee and it's going to make you miserable not having one, that's more stressful and more likely to cause tinnitus than having your coffee. So I think that, sorry, can you, so I think it's difficult.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me again what you've just said? Because I'm full of cold.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Susan.
Trying not to cough. I'm trying not to cough, and then I.
Oh, it's fine. You cough away. It's absolutely no problem. You were answering a myriad of different questions, actually. And I think I probably put you off by getting excited about a certain area that you were talking about.
Sorry.
No, not at all. Why does tinnitus get louder sometimes? Why do we have the spike?
Yeah, we'll get the spike. So I was saying about the diary, yeah. I would have a look at the diary, and it's really difficult. Everyone's individual. We know one of the biggest factors is stress, and that can be a physical or an emotional stress. And I think people misunderstand the word stress a little bit and think, well, I'm not stressed. But the point is, anyone at the moment who says they've not been stressed by COVID, you have to look and think, yeah, you don't understand what stress actually is, because it's about your body having a change of routine. It's about your body not having the physical emotion of having a good laugh with your friends every so often. Those are all things that are really important to how we function and how our body manages stress. And if most of the time when we've got a balanced life, it really isn't important and we don't notice it. And we, you know, and it's not about saying you're a stressy person, it's about how stress can affect you. So I think it is important to do a diary. We were talking about foods and things, weren't we? And that's where we got off the thing. And I think it's unlikely that dietary things can cause tinnitus. However, if you had a real allergy to something, or, you know, a real, not necessarily an allergy, but, you know, something that really did upset you, then yeah, I suppose they could be that link. So I think it's about, you know, having a look at the bigger picture and not just saying, oh, well, I've lived with this stress for 3 years, so why should it bother me now? Actually, that's maybe exactly now why it's got worse, because now your body just can't take anymore, you know? So yeah, it's a difficult question to answer. I think you'd have to look at each individual person. So I'm sorry I can't give you a better answer on that.
Amazing answer. It's an amazing answer, and I'm going straight to my question number 15 now. So we'll go all over the place, but we're
That's all right. Just keep me online when I need to be, keep me back if I need to.
We'll mainline some coffee into you, Susan.
Yeah, I've got some water left before I start coughing again.
When we last spoke at the hospital, when I bumped into you, you reminded me of the importance of keeping the journal, and we were talking about that. I've always asked you, Susan, about the support that you give us with the app. I'm always asking you questions. And how can we make updates that are important? And you said something that blew our minds, James and I and Silas, which was, you said to me, I don't think you really realise the importance of your journal. It's great you've got it in there, but I don't think you really realise how good this could be, this journal for people. And one of the things you said is that for you as an audiologist, the idea that you can immediately find out more about what's going on with their tinnitus, it's a really good indicator of really trying to work out how things are going with that individual person. So, what kind of thing would you say to start with? I've got a few questions based on this journal, which is, what would you kind of write? What would you, if for you, that it would help you?
I think, how's it affecting your day-to-day? What is it that's, what is it about your tinnitus that's affecting your day-to-day? Is it stopped you going and doing something? Has it just meant that it's an annoyance and you can't read your book? Whatever that is. How would you score it out of 10 for loudness today? So those are the sorts of things. Just looking generally on what's been going on in your life today, because I think that's a good management tool just anyway for being good to yourself and kind to yourself. And then you can look back and say, oh yeah, well, I didn't go for a walk for 5 days leading up to this. Maybe I need to get out for a walk tomorrow. Maybe that'll help me. So it's about sort of looking generally at your day, pinpointing, I went to work today, I didn't go to work today, I went for a walk today, I didn't go for a walk today, whatever. Key points, really. So it's real sort of key points of what you've done for yourself, what you've done, as far as work and things are concerned, be it around the house or going out or upstairs in your study like I am, So yeah, I think those are significant factors. I'm not sure that necessarily diet is like we said needs to be put in there, but if you feel it's significant, put it in. It won't do any harm. And how you felt in yourself emotionally as well that day. Was it a good day or a bad day for you? Have you had a cold or those sorts of things? Because I just think you start to look yourself and see your patterns. If it's concise enough. You don't want to necessarily waffle on, but those key points really is how many out of 10 for loudness today, that sort of thing would be quite useful. And it would be useful for the patient to reflect back to. That's where the tinnitus handicap inventory, which I often do with patients, is a useful tool, because they may say, oh, it's no better, but their score may well have improved by quite a significant amount. And you say, well, actually, you're doing better than you think. You've done really well. And people just sometimes need that motivation, and it can be a motivational tool as well as a good diagnostics.
That's really great. Yeah, I found for me the diary that I just kept before we had the app. I used to keep it, and it was very simple. It's kind of exactly what you were saying. It wasn't terribly detailed, but it didn't need to be. But it told me exactly where I was and where I've come from, and if I've maybe slid off the journey or whether I've managed to do quite well, and even where you had great days, sometimes it would just be not very good or very pleasant, and it would give you an idea also that when it's not pleasant, it allows you to give yourself a bit of a harder time, because when you would go back say 5 steps and what was the perceived a level of 10 then suddenly becomes, in my case it felt like 12 or 15, then I would be really anxious about that, because I'd feel like I've just gone back so far. It felt like I've gone back 2 years, not even 5 steps. And then the whole habituation just felt insurmountable. And you're absolutely right. By keeping it kind of simple, but concise, so you know exactly what's happening. It was really good way of charting progress or no progress.
And it's great for a clinician then. I'm always happy when people bring lists in. They always think, oh, you'll think I'm silly bringing this. No, I don't. Thank you very much. That's great. I have a guy I see once a year for support, and he always writes a wonderful letter of everything that's happened through the year, and it's great for me. He just likes to have that support and know that I'm there for him. But I just, I take that letter, I type it all back up on my computer. I have all those letters over the years of all the things that have affected him through the year and how he's managing, basically. It's really useful information.
That's superb, Susan. That is absolutely superb. Okay, another question. It was something that was really brilliant, and I've never forgotten it. It was an answer that you gave once to somebody in the tinnitus community about, it was like a discussion, and you kind of got involved with the discussion, and your answer was great. It was about hearing aids, and essentially it was NHS versus private. And you were saying, actually, and I asked somebody the other day about it, and I just wanted you to explain, because you were saying, actually, hang on a minute, before you spend a lot of money, the NHS ones are actually rather very, very good, aren't they?
Yeah, and we at the moment are incredibly lucky on the island that we've got some aids that we now can offer patients with connectivity. So when you've got the tinnitus, it's useful to have that connectivity so that you can stream your own music and your own sounds from an app. So the aids that we're issuing patients, we've got some Phonak aids with connectivity, but they're more for Androids. But our Engage Oticon aids use the Oticon app. So it's called Oticon On app. So it's, and it means that you can connect and stream directly to your aids. So you, with your T- app, can you be using that directly into your aids now?
Wow, that's superb.
Yeah, so why would you? Okay, if you want to go cosmetic and you want something more cosmetically pleasing, go private. Absolutely, if that's what you want to do, and that's going to give you the confidence to wear hearing aids and manage things better, go for it if you can afford it. But if you can't afford it, there's still some excellent hearing aids on the NHS. Now, ours are battery operated still at the moment, but they will, so these are Bluetooth connectivity basically now, but they will eventually go to being rechargeable. We do have them for our children now to be rechargeable. So they will come in, and eventually we'll also be able to program them while you're at home. So we'll be able to dial you up, talk to you in real time, and adjust hearing aids in real time with you. And that is looking to the future. It's amazing that was being trialled just as we went into lockdown for paediatrics in London, and the trials are looking good. So
that's fantastic. It'd be the same as if I wanted to try a musical instrument. It's like if I was in the shop trying a cymbal, I'd probably be hitting it 1,000 times and I wouldn't be able to tell you. It's only when I'm in my own space and I'm on my own, then I could get a balance. And I would, I don't use aids at the moment, but I would imagine it would be very similar. It's okay coming to see you. Obviously, it's great, and you do the fitting, but you can only really get a sense of it, can't you, when you're in your own space, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely. So of course, it's always difficult when patients come in for a fitting, and it is all about the counselling and saying to them, it sounds great in here now because there's no other noises going on, and acoustically it's got a carpet and it's quite nice. You're going to go home and you're going to get in the bathroom, you're going to flush the toilet, it's like Niagara Falls, and it's so true. And it was much worse back in the day of analog hearing aids. Let me tell you now, we had screwdrivers and spec sheets to program the aids, and you were really taking 3 months to adjust fully to those aids then. Well, things have progressed so much in that sort of 25 years that they're all computer programmable. We can even take the shape of your ear into consideration when programming it, because obviously the acoustics of the shape of your canal affect how you hear it. And so we do all of those things with a fitting now, as well as some great hearing aids with great processing, because the technology for hearing aids is also sort of very useful, let's say, for certain spying devices. There's been a lot of research and development in microphones and directional microphones that we've been able to then take on with hearing aids and steal that research that wasn't necessarily done for hearing aids, but now been able to take advantage of that. So you'll find now with newer aids, as you progress, and you'll end up, everyone progresses on to the next aid and the next aid eventually. We can't do everyone at once. That you're getting a better speech clarity with still hearing lots of background noise, but it being less obtrusive, which is really key, because one of the problems we have when we lose our hearing is we lose the ability to filter sound, usually before we lose our hearing. So we lose the ability to hear speech in noise. And that often happens because that's the outer hair cells of the cochlea, and they go before the inner ones start to go. So we tend to lose our ability to hear speech and noise first, and then we get a hearing loss. It just compounds it. Well, we've lost those hair cells. We can't replace them. So a hearing aid is great. It amplifies, fills in the missing gaps, but it can't do that job, which is the filtering. But good hearing aid technology now is making it so much easier for people to be able to learn to filter those sounds, because you can train your brain. Your brain is quite plastic, and you can train it to do lots of things, given time and persistence. So the key with hearing aids is being persistent. You wear it all day, every day. You don't take it out because you sat indoors. You wear it all day, and you train your brain to what is the normal level, and you will get on with it.
This is brilliant. This is what I feel, and I do speak to people about it, but I do it on myself, which is how I've managed to get myself back from really quite catastrophic tinnitus. Is a lot of hard work, and it's exactly what you're saying. So do I get regular exercise? Well, I walk every day, and I gather sounds, but my sound therapy I use constantly when I'm in the throes of it. So it's all the time. It's not just when I feel like it, it's all the time. And even when I'm fine, I'll listen to noise or sound at nighttime anyhow, as part of the routine. It's part of the discipline, isn't it, of getting your brain to start to work. And exactly what you're saying, and you call it plasticity. I feel exactly the same. I'm going to play. And once I've done a lot of sound therapy, or I've a lot of sound enrichment, whatever it might be, I know that I can start to mess with the tinnitus. I can start to control it. And it does become plastic. It's wonderful. It's a great feeling. Once you get past the fear and the anxiety, I don't know what you'd call it. I guess in my mind, I always think that's quite a perverse thing, the idea that you can start to play with it. But it's the only way I can think of actually quantifying what I'm doing. I can't think of any other description. I am going to play.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And everybody's different. So for you, that works really well. And you'll find other people will do the same. Some people will like to meditate to it. I think some of the problems with that is it's about paying attention to sound. But the thing is, as a musician, that's what your brain is primed and trained to do. That's what you're so good at. And that's why you're a musician, because your brain works in that way. You're used, and you'll find that anybody who's a musician or is a trained listener of some description will always find it more challenging to tame their tinnitus, because their brain is hardwired to tune in, not tune out.
Yeah, that's right.
So, it makes it really tough. So you will find that that's the way it works for you, therefore. So it's different for everybody how they manage their tinnitus, because for you being a tuner inner, you've got to find another way of managing that. Whereas somebody else, actually naturally for them to tune out, and they can attenuate very quickly and rapidly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I've coined my own phrase for myself. I've called myself the Great Disruptor, and I think that's what I'm sort of doing with tinnitus, because I am trained to listen. I think now I'm starting to work out that also I've got to learn how to disrupt that. So that's kind of my little bit of methodology, actually only over the last 2 weeks, actually.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, cool.
You get these realizations, don't you?
Yeah, sometimes it just hits you, and you just think, okay, I've really got to change how I'm, doing this now, because that isn't working or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. Turn things on their head. Always try something new. Don't be frightened.
Lovely. I've got a question that really relates to maybe what we may be about to go into, or anyhow, even if we are suffering with the associated problems with isolation.
Yeah.
So there are 2 questions with this, really. Are there any tips right now that you might be able to offer regarding they're massive ones, really, but anxiety and fear. I mean, I know they're huge subject matters, but what do you think, even over Christmas, or say, for example, perish the thought we go into another situation where we might, you know, be kind of like told that we might need to stay at home and all those kinds of things. So hopefully that won't happen. But what can we kind of do to try and prepare our minds for that kind of eventuality?
Well, yeah, good question. I think, again, it's a very personal thing. I do think that having your little tinnitus toolkit, if you like, is and actually having a physical one is actually a really good idea. So yes, we know those, we've got our T- app and we've got our hearing aids, but you know, sometimes we actually need a bit of a reminder, because when we are actually really overwhelmed with anxiety, which, you know, let's be honest, is very likely in the current climate to happen at any time with what's going on for some people, is to sort of make sure that you've got written up somewhere what it is you should be doing, because you can't think straight when you're anxious, and that's a very good reason for that, because your body is saying you need to run, you need to go, because your fight or flight is, you know, telling you to do that, and it doesn't want you to sit down and do anything. It doesn't want you to sit down and concentrate. It wants you to leg it. And of course, that's the last thing you do. You actually got to stay indoors. So what you need to do perhaps is to think about having your little chart of things that you like to do that you can do indoors. And, you know, it might be that you love to do a jigsaw puzzle, and jigsaw puzzles are fantastic for keeping your mind busy and occupied whilst listening to music. I think that that's one of the joys of jigsawing is putting the vinyl on and getting out the jigsaw puzzle and being completely absorbed until you find the child has stolen that last piece so they can fill it themselves. So, you know, having something like a jigsaw puzzle, numbers of the friends that you remember to call that make you smile and laugh, you know, going out for a walk and reminding yourself that actually you can walk down that lovely little lane, the one that you remember and really enjoyed going down, you know, that sort of thing. And making yourself a bit of an SOS pack, but part of your tinnitus toolkit, really, of things that you can do for general anxiety. And it might just be, you've got the phone number of your best mate there. So say, when you're feeling that you don't know what to do, call me, you know, that sort of thing, because you've got to have it sometimes written on the cupboard door, somewhere where you can just sit and look at it. It might be on the back of the toilet door even, you know, somewhere where suddenly you're going to read it and see it and sort of wake up to, okay, all right, it will be okay. Everything always turns out okay in the end, you know, we'll get through this, but I just need to stop and take stock and see what I can do to help myself. I think the most important thing at the moment is everyone needs to be kind to themselves. Whatever it is they love doing, obviously within reason, is just get on and do it. You know, if you love that little walk by the stream and you can get out and do that, get out and do it. You know, if you love to ring your friend and have a good laugh, do it. If you like to have coffee with friends, you can sit outside at the moment. It's not that cold. Buy a coat. You know, do it. Don't hold back on doing the things you love, because those are the things that will keep you sane and help you through if there is another lockdown, for sure.
So brilliant. I love the idea of this tinnitus toolkit. So really, well, you've answered another question, which is what would be in your tinnitus toolkit, and that's exactly it. I've got part of my tinnitus toolkit here. And it's not a plug, but this is my new ACS, and it isn't a plug, but that's in my toolkit. I've got my white noise just in case. Perfect. And I'm looking at you and the app, so I've got that. And it's like, I carry it around with me at the moment. It's almost like a shield. It's protection. Well,
a lot of people say, you know, it's my little comfort blanket. I might not use that, but I don't want to give it back to you when I give someone a white noise generator and they've managed to overcome their problems. But they still want to hold on to that. And I think that's fantastic. And I'm very happy for people to do that. Keep hold of it. It's there if you need it, and you won't need it if you've got it. You know, the chances are you won't. But if 10 years' time you're having problems again, you dig it out the cupboard and you use it, absolutely fantastic. You're not having to wait to see somebody. You've got it there ready to use. So, you know, even if things improve, you still want that little toolkit. You still want to know where that little package of things is as and when you may require it.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. So in a sense, when you're talking about sound therapy, would you advise on the use of sound therapy or other types of masking or desensitization protocols when assisting people then with the management of their tinnitus, Susan?
Everybody's individual, so I would definitely tailor it to that person. So I'd get the advice from the professional that you're seeing, but definitely sound therapy. We know it works. We know it's an important part of the package. So sound therapy doesn't necessarily, it can be more effective, let's say, if you're getting counselling at the same time. So just the support of how you're using it properly. You know, is it the right level for you? Is it the type of thing that actually does engage your brain enough that you're still able to function and hear people, but it is putting that tinnitus back in its place. So I think you do need a little bit of support to get the sound therapy right. But I would highly recommend it. And yeah, I mean, if you find that you're busy during the day and it doesn't bother you, it's when you get into bed at night, then use some sound therapy for an hour before you go to bed. Continue it then into, having a timer on for an hour. It's not going to work straight away. You're not going to magically get to sleep that first night because you're using it. But eventually your brain understands, after years possibly, it can take a long time for some people, it will understand that by doing that, it means it's bedtime.
Yeah, it's finally happened for me, actually. I mean, I say finally, it's been like that really for the last sort of 6-7 years, but up to then pretty poor sleep until again you put the work in. So before the app, I was just making my own sound therapy or my own sounds that were interesting for me, but I could never ever get to the full 60 minutes. I was gone before, way before. I was probably gone after about 9 minutes. Excellent. I'd never get to the end, but you do. It's like you're training the whole time. You're training to bring your tinnitus down. You're training to sleep. It's like you're putting the work in, and it does take work.
This is the trouble, and of course, if you're in such a state that you haven't got the energy to put the work in, that's where the challenge really is. So start off with little bits if need be, but just don't expect results quickly. Just be in it for the long haul, if you like, for the long road. Be in it and just keep doing it. Just because you don't notice an improvement after 3 months, don't stop doing it. Keep doing it, because eventually your brain will learn, oh, it's sleep time. It's like the visualization journey thing that people do to get to sleep. Now I only have to start thinking about going on my bike to my best friends and I'm asleep, most of the time. So it actually now is a trigger for me to get to sleep. But that has taken a few years to achieve.
Yeah.
So, but it just goes to show you can even train my brain, which is quite impressive.
No, I don't mean I agree with it.
No, well, I do. I'd say I'm going to show. But it's being repetitive enough that we know that you can train a brain. A brain is pretty fantastic. So yes, it is very much about brain training and persistence and perseverance. I always say that with patients. It's the 3 Ps. Practice, perseverance, and patience. But that was with hearing aids. Really important. But it is the same thing, really. It's your brain training by using an aid. It's the same thing, brain training by learning to desensitize to the tinnitus and attenuate.
Fantastic. Okay, attenuate. What does that mean, please?
Well, attenuate, if you lived next to a busy road, after a while you wouldn't hear that sound, so you'd attenuate to it. Your brain would say, well, it doesn't even hear it. So your neighbour would come in and say, my God, you've got a train down the bottom of your garden. Oh yeah, it goes past every hour. I don't hear it anymore. Your brain's got used to that. It knows it's there. It knows it's nothing to worry about. Yeah. And so you attenuate to that sound. So you can attenuate sounds. You've just got to not be anxious about them. The minute you're anxious about a sound, your brain will not attenuate to it, clearly, because it sees it as a threat. So, that's where the training comes in, to train yourself to, understand that. But the sound therapy really, it's the basis of helping people with tinnitus management. But on its own, could get a bit lost and a bit confusing, I think. So, get some help with it.
Brilliant, Susan. Okay, it's another question. And again, it comes up a lot, and you also have touched upon it. But if I could ask this specific question, it comes from a member of our community. If tinnitus has been caused by COVID, where is the damage and what is the prognosis for recovery, please?
Well, good question, because we don't know any of those answers yet. However, in my experience with people with infections, and this is an infection, this is a viral infection, and often flu, we see, I've seen patients in the past who've had flu that's triggered their tinnitus. Then generally with time, it either goes completely or it becomes just something that you manage and it's not noticeable after a while. Now, there'll always be an exception to the rule, depending on perhaps who you are, how it happened, to the degree. Was it also the COVID or the drugs that you were given at that time, or was it just the infection? So it's going to be really complex, and no one can give an exact answer. But in my general, from what I've seen with other viral infections, I'd be very positive about the fact that this will improve with time.
Yes.
But you do need to give it time. If you have a surgical procedure and they cut a nerve, for example, it takes up to 18 months before you can feel that area again where they've done the surgery. So you think about the nervous pathway, the brain, the endings there. Was there brain inflammation, which we know can happen with flu? So any areas that were inflamed are going to be damaged. Is that damage permanent, or actually is it going to improve with time? And generally it does. Inflammation often improves, just giving it long enough to manage. Now, sometimes it leaves scarring. So yeah, we may still experience some, but there's always scope for that sort of inflammatory infection to therefore improve with given enough time and patience.
Brilliant. That's a fantastic answer. That's amazing. Thank you very much, Susan. Again, we have somebody that's stating, I think I have somatic stroke solitosensory tinnitus, tensing neck plus jaw changes and the increase of the perception. I contracted for following 6 months. Just wondered if this could be inflammatory or stress related. Someone also mentioned OAE, otoacoustic emissions test, to check how the cochlea works. I have a minor hearing loss in the left ear, tinnitus ear, with high frequencies.
Okay, well, yeah, I think it's a bit difficult to say, because obviously you'd need to take a full medical history, wouldn't you, with that sort of situation? Yeah, if she's not seen an ENT specialist, she needs to see an ENT specialist, and then yes, to then have some further testing done to establish exactly what's going on. So if she hasn't seen a specialist yet, then that's what you need to do, and hopefully she'll get some answers. But I can't really comment on something that I don't really know enough about, unfortunately. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's a great answer. We have another question. We've got absolutely quite a lot coming in, which is tremendous. When you have a hearing test, but your tinnitus is very high, like a 10 out of 10, can it make it hard to hear the high decibel hearing tests? And could this give a false result?
It's interesting, isn't it?
I would probably have asked that question many times over the years.
I think people do get rather anxious about that happening, for sure. And so a good tester will always change the test a little and sit down and just have a really good chat and help the person to relax before they do the test. So I think that it's unlikely, and so there's a bit of a buffer zone when we do an audiogram, and when you test, you will likely, if I tested you now and then test you in half an hour's time, there could be 5 decibels difference in each frequency anyway, and you wouldn't expect it to be more than that with tinnitus. So we do, if you like, we factor that in as being something that could happen, and often you'll find remarks written on the audiogram of patient was inconsistent, found it really difficult, trigger happy due to their tinnitus. So, there are notes written around it. So then we cautiously fit people, and then maybe go back and test again if need be.
I'm really glad you said that, the test again, because I think, oh, bless you.
Sorry.
I felt that occasionally when there was some kind of degree of spike, that my test would have been far worse than had it been a normal day of tinnitus. And the idea that you've just said, you know, it is possible to take the test again would make perfect sense to me, because you do get some bad days whereby you really are not hearing properly because the frequency of the tinnitus is a lot louder than usual, and then it does subside, and then you get your hearing back with it. So
well,
and
you know,
because you've got a cold or something like that. You're right.
Exactly. You know yourself that when your tinnitus is loud, the TV's up louder, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, you can, and so you just have to explain that to the person doing the test.
Yeah.
You know, it's really important. And then, you know, you can be retested and then cautiously fitted, you know, to make sure that's into account.
This isn't a question, but someone has brilliantly written in and said, can I transfer to you on the NHS and get your wisdom and experience, please?
Well, it depends on where they live. They can always move to the Portsmouth Hospital Trust area, I suppose. But we do have lots of lovely colleagues all over the country. It's just finding the person that works for you, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. The other thing I was going to say is kind of, I'm glad we've got the time. We're getting close, but this is a personal question. Can we overprotect ourselves with hearing protection?
Well, you can, as far as then perhaps being more sensitive to sound because of that. So yes, you can always shift your threshold of what's comfortable or not. And so that's why we don't advise people using the in-ear earbuds, because that tends to shift our threshold. So we'll often find parents come in and complain their children, for example, having the TV really loud and needing everything really loud and being sort of shouting. And you may find the same of people who perhaps work in a ticket booth, like in a car park or whatever. They're really loud and all the family complain they're loud. When you test the hearing, it's perfectly okay. And it's because, you know, either they're working in a loud environment, or in this case, because they're using the earbuds and the sound is right there, they've shifted their thresholds. And so they want everything that little bit louder, but you can bring that down again as well. Yeah. So yes, you can.
Would earplugs help somebody working through their associated difficulties with the condition of hyperacusis?
Yeah, I think there's a time and a place for them, really, and it's individual to, again, each person. So you'd have to find out about that person, what it is they're doing, because if it means that they're stopping doing something because of it, then you have to find a way of working with that, because you don't want to stop somebody doing what they love doing. Yeah. You need, like we were saying before on the whole coffee thing, you've got to find a way of working with that. So if it means that most of the time they don't wear earplugs, but they do for this one thing, because then they can still do that one thing and that makes them happy, you know, we know the rest is history, that makes them feel better, and etc., then it's got to be worth considering. It's not a blanket rule to say no. You know, in the old days, it definitely was. Yeah, definitely, you know, don't use earplugs, or just making things worse. But actually, it's finding that balance.
Yes. And so, for example, someone with hyperacusis, because I know we've spoken about that many times, and I guess I'm able to talk about it because I had it and I got over it when I started to allow my life again. Yeah. But that, well, it's not difficult to self-diagnose. You know you really have something like that. But in that interim, well, that early stage where you have hyperacusis, would you say that would be the need to self-protect, or would that be the time where you definitely do not go down that rabbit hole of putting the ear protection in? I think
that's a difficult one, isn't it? I think that's an individual thing. I think what you would do is say, look, if you want to keep going in noisy environments, pop some plugs in that have been filter plugs, so they attenuate the sound, but you still get the clarity. Okay. So you're still hearing things naturally, normally, but it's not as loud as it could be, for example, maybe. If it's meaning that otherwise you're staying indoors, because that's not normal and not right. Yeah. So it is very much, you know, and other people might say, oh, you don't want to do that. I think it's very individual. You've got to look at each person, their lifestyle, what they're not doing because of it, and then find a way of them moving forward, haven't you? There's no point saying, oh no, you can't, so they say, okay, I'm staying indoors. That's not helping.
Absolutely. And that was really where I went wrong initially. And when I went wrong quite catastrophically. It took me, I think it probably took me about, I was still working, still doing music, and still functioning as a person, but it kind of took me about 2 years to work it out properly. It really did. It was only because I went to see this wonderful woman, Penny Stannard, somebody very much like yourself, who gave me some hearing therapy, and that was like gold to me. I just need that clinical information to let me know what was safe, what was dangerous, good noise exposure time, education. It was all those things, because I was ending up taking ear protection for even going in my car and driving. It got that.
And you look at it now and you think, I was really not of sound mind at that point in time to be doing that, because that's not normal behaviour. But of course, when you're, like you say, down that rabbit hole, oh my goodness me, it's such a dark place that, you know, you'll do anything to protect yourself, basically, won't you? So yeah, I think the most important thing when you first experience hyperacusis is to make sure that you've got lots of gentle noise going on around you. It's a bit like having a candle in a dark room. It shines really brightly, but when you turn the light on, you don't really see the candle anymore. And so, you know, if you've got lots of other sounds going on, when there is a louder sound, it's not so loud because it's within those other sounds going on around you. So actually, yes, by making things really quiet and wearing plugs, you were just amplifying that problem. Excuse the pun, but you know, and that's exactly what was happening. So yes, it is important to bathe yourself and again have that sound therapy on a low level, but it's about being on all the time, so the brain is listening and hearing and realizing this is a safe environment, these are safe sounds, this is perfectly okay.
That's right. And I think what you're saying is bathing in it is actually right. So for me as well, when I'm in bed, so I might put on my own sound therapy, but when I'm outside, I deliberately try and really train. What I do now, I've trained my brain to take in every outside source.
Yeah.
So I equate it to almost, it sounds a bit corny, but I sort of see it a bit like Predator meets Terminator, whereby you've got this mind that is kind of seeing everything, it's hearing everything, it's processing constantly.
It's conjured up a picture for me, Rupert, it really has.
Walking around Ride High Street.
Yeah, I'll be looking for you.
With all these wires coming out, absolutely. Yeah. That's kind of how I take all those morsels of sound, everything gets used.
Yeah, fantastic. Well done.
Cook, where you use absolutely everything, you know, right down to the memory of a place you went to, that goes in the soup, everything goes in there.
Lovely.
And it is that with me really with sound. It's like I'm finding every avenue I can to alleviate quietness, or at least just create a good sense of balance with sound. Yes. I've kind of gone a bit too far though, but I think it's okay because I know there's noise exposure times, but if an ambulance goes by, I put my hands behind my back and I do not block it out.
Well, do you know what? Ambulances are noisy, and most normal people would put their hands over their ears. So don't worry about it, you know, because that is a noisy thing, and it's for a good reason. It's noisy, you know. So yeah, don't be frightened of being normal.
Yeah,
no, that's absolutely.
Oh my God. But thanks ever so much, Susan. I think we've covered everything. I'm so delighted with this session, Susan.
Fantastic. I had a great time, thank you.
It's been brilliant, and I'd just like to also thank you on behalf of James Tice and myself for just constantly helping us all the time, Susan. You've always been there. You answer my emails or messages almost like within the hour. You don't have to, but you're always there to support us. Thank you so much for everything you've done.
It's my pleasure, and I get a lot out of it, and I enjoy helping people, as you know. So it's what I do, and thank you for giving me the opportunity really to help more people that obviously I can't see and perhaps are struggling to be able to access services at the moment. You know that there is hope. lots of people out there to help you. You know, you might just need to do a little bit of research about your local teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we'll talk privately, but and if it's okay, if we could talk after this, just very briefly, just to say thank you as a team. We'd love to just thank you. But maybe what's happening with the Tinnitus Isle of Wight support group at the moment? No, I know what the answer is, but have you got any ideas for
very frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I'd had on the cards to do a meeting for November, and then I was like, you
had a massive turnout for the first one, Susan. It was
we did. I mean, it was the first meeting. We had 50 people, you know, and of course, because of that, that makes it really difficult. So my thought process was, you know, I'll just be contacting the people that I've got in my emails for the Isle of Wight Tinnitus group, because you know, that won't be everybody. You know, at least I'm not sort of advertising it out there for more people, if you like. Try and keep it to the people that came last time, and then if need be, if enough people were going to say yes, then I was going to have to break it into groups. But then this all happened again. I thought, oh, you know, it's like dangling a carrot, isn't it? You know, it's really nasty. I'm not going to say anything to anybody. I'm just going to wait now, because you know, it's nothing worse than someone keep pulling the plug. There's nothing worse than this nearly getting there and then all being taken away from you again. It's awful. So I am hoping in February time, it was February 2 years ago, of course, it's coming. So it will, so we'll have an anniversary party of our first and only meeting 2 years later. You know, it's the way it is. I think I would have probably got something done in the summer, but we had a few problems, as you know, at home.
Oh, I know.
So, it's been a nightmare, absolute nightmare, and it's still nowhere near finished. So, so of course, emotionally, I was not very resilient, and you know, you've got to be in a good place to help people.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Well, look, thanks ever so much, Susan. And just to let everybody know that they can contact us if they want to on www.t-info. On Instagram, we are tinnitus-. We're on Twitter, Facebook, T-Tinnitus Wellness Support Group for Facebook. And we're on LinkedIn. Blimey, we're on loads of things.
Everything. Well, Merry Christmas, everybody, anyway.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, everybody. And thanks ever so much on behalf of all of us. Thanks, Susan.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Cheers.